So what if I told you that in one 90-minute session with me, I could get to the root of your life's most pressing issue, and not just get to the root, but actually create a path forward for resolution? Would you believe me? Come on in, watch today's video, and I'm going to show you the tools that I use to do just that. Hi, I'm Rev Shell. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So my last video, Becoming Body Aware, is a great tool for you to use to learn how to get into your body, to feel and honor what's going on, what you're feeling, because body awareness is pivotal to mother wound healing. Because the emotions that are connected to your mother wound, they sit in your body. And so having awareness about your body and having awareness about how those emotions sit in your body is pivotal. And it's absolutely necessary as we move through this healing process. So today we're going to dive a little bit more into the work that I do. But before we do, I want to double check and make sure that you're subscribed to my channel, that you've hit that bell. What? You're not? I'm going to give you a second to take care of that because you definitely want to be subscribed to my channel. I'm going to have lots of tools, lots of topics, and this is going to be the space that you want to come back to. Okay, you're done? Awesome, let's go. So what is family mapping? So family mapping is the tool that I use to connect the dots from why we are in session to the origin or the root in your life. And on its surface, it's like any intake process for any new client, but it's so much more than that. It's the delicate, very specific questions that I ask you to get to the root of your issue. So it's less of you telling me your story and more of my attunement into the words that you use to answer the questions about your family. So that attunement is called the core language approach. So the core language approach gives us tools and it maps us back to your core trauma, which is the root of your issue. And it does that in the form of emotionally charged words and sentences that you use. So the core language approach was developed by Mark Wolin, the author of It Didn't Start With You, a book that completely changed my life. And I highly recommend that you read it, especially if you're going to be doing this work. It not only changed my personal life, but it changed my entire private practice. It changed the scope of the work that I do. And I shifted focus after reading that and then learning the tools that are in that book. I actually took a whole year course learning how to do family mapping and family constellations. And it was ushered into my life through reading that book. So the four language approach is comprised of four components: the core complaint, your core descriptors, your core sentence, and your core trauma. So let me break those down for you a bit. The core complaint is, from your perspective, why are we here? Why are we in session? As you talk to me, I'm looking for words that have the most potent resonance, unusual symptoms, and the words that are the most dramatic, and the words that seem to have a life of their own. And then there's core descriptors. And these are the words that you use to describe your parents and your family of origin. So I might ask you very targeted questions like, tell me about your mom. Was she warm and cuddly, or was she cold and distant? Or I might ask you, give me two descriptors, two-word adjectives that you would use to describe your mom. And it's in those words that become your core descriptors. And it's usually in those words that I can tell which of the four themes your issue falls into. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. So the words that you use to describe your parents really start to create the framework to begin working with the root of your core issue. So as the conversation flows, we'll move through the branches of your family tree. I usually want to know about mom and dad, grandma and grandpa on both sides, maybe even their parents. And it starts to give me an understanding of some patterns in your family from the systemic view of your family. Because as Mark Wolin writes in It Didn't Start With You, your core descriptors contain the seeds of the resolution that you seek. And then we move into your core sentence. This is more about you personally. This is the narrative that runs the background of your life. So it's the sentence that deepens your despair. It describes your worst fears. And when you speak it, it actually causes a physical reaction in your body. And this is why understanding that emotion, mind-body connection is really important as we move through this. So your core sentence may be something like, I'm all alone. I'm going to let my family down. I'll lose control. This will never end. It's all my fault. Those are some examples of core sentences. So your core sentence often leads back to the traumatic events in your family that then make up your core trauma. So it targets the causes and not the symptoms. We're not just finding out how your core trauma has manifested in your symptoms, but actually what is your core trauma. And your core sentence provides incredible context as to the why you feel the way that you do. So using the 3 prior principles, we can generally identify your core trauma. And your core trauma is the root of what you're trying to resolve. And then it becomes the focus of the next step in this process, your family constellation. And that would be the next step of the work that we do together. So as we talk about all of these, as you answer my questions, I'm also creating a genogram for you. And a genogram is like a family tree, but it gives us a perfect map of how and where your core trauma originated. And so from there, I can usually place your core trauma into one of 4 themes. And those 4 themes are a break in the bond, a merge, a rejection, and an identification. So a break in the bond, let me explain these. From the moment of conception, we are wired to tune into the way that mom responds to us. And when that relationship is affected in any way, so are we. And the ways that we can be affected really exist on a spectrum from very minor to profoundly wounding. And this breaking the bond is really the foundation of my work in ending the cycle of your mother wound. So breaking the bond is basically a damaged or an impaired relationship with mom. And it generally happens anywhere from in utero to about 7. That's generally the time that breaking the bonds happen. And then we have a merge. And a merge is evidenced by the way that we repeat the patterns of our parents. So merging is one of the ways that we show unconscious loyalty to our parents, and it's also the way that we feel close to them. And it often can look like merging or taking on their pain and their behaviors. And this is subconscious. Oftentimes we don't even know what we're doing. And then there's a rejection. And a rejection is just that. It's the conscious rejection of our parents. It's saying, I don't want to have anything to do with my mom. I don't want to have anything to do with my dad. I'm going absolutely no contact with them. I don't need them in my life. And it's literally creating that barrier and rejecting one or both of your parents. Now, this one is delicate because sometimes you have to create that physical separation for you to remain safe, because maybe your parents aren't safe. Maybe they're physically abusive. Maybe they're emotionally abusive. And so you have to create those barriers around you and those boundaries around you so that you could remain emotionally and physically safe. But the beauty of this work is it is less about the way that your relationship manifests outwardly and more about the way that you carry your parents in your heart. It's about the way that you resolve your own connection to them and find peace with that. So you can keep your physical distance from them while completely reshaping your inner relationship with your parents. And that's what this work is really focused on. Because what it does is it reshapes your understanding about the way that your family was formed, about the systems that are working in your family, and about how systemically issues are showing up throughout your generations in your family. And ultimately, what I have seen and what this work has evidenced is that it generally leads to compassion for who your parents were and what they didn't have when they came into parenting. And so that compassion can often create a massive shift in the way that you hold your parents, whether or not you ever talk to them again. And this work is even is powerful and very effective when your parents are no longer living. I did a lot of this work with my mom and my dad, and both of them are gone. And so it can have a massive shift in the way that you hold them internally. And that's what this work is really about. So rejection is an interesting dynamic to work with because it's going to challenge some things about the way that you hold them internally. When there is a rejection of one or both parents, you're ultimately rejecting a part of yourself. And when you reject them, the thing that you reject them for will usually find its way back to you in the form of friends or partners or at work or in all kinds of ways. It will generally find its way back to you. Maybe we play out a rejection of our mother by having friends who maybe have the same personality or who treat us like she treated us. Maybe a rejection of your father plays out in you having a mate that is just like your father. One of my favorite questions to ask clients, especially when they come in with relationship issues, or their mother wound is showing up in their relationship, one of my favorite questions to ask them is, which one of your parents did you marry? And I often get these dumbfounded looks like, what do you mean, which one of my parents did I marry? I didn't marry either of them. So the more we dive into who their partner is and contrast that with the personality and issues they had with the parent that they reject, the more that we see those connections. And then there is an identification, and the identification is a really interesting one. So an identification happens when your core trauma originates outside of your direct line. So outside of your mom and dad, outside of your grandparents. And it happens when a family member is silenced or rejected or removed from the family. Because when that happens, it creates a hole in the family soul, like a placeholder in the family soul. And in Bert Hellinger's Orders of Love, which are guiding principles, kind of like the universal laws of family mapping and constellation work, when there is a rejection and it creates a hole in the family soul, it pushes right up against the Orders of Love that says no one can be left out. No one can be excluded from the family, even the ones that we are not that proud of. So when someone is left out of the family memories and they live in the shameful stories deemed too painful to acknowledge or discuss, an identification is that story searching for inclusion back into the family. And this is the most mysterious of the 4 themes. And it's really fascinating when it shows up. It's the one that can be the most elusive. And in future episodes of here on my YouTube channel, I'm going to read constellation stories. I think maybe I'm going to call it constellation story, or I don't know, we'll see. But I'm going to share with you some stories of constellations that have been done and what an actual identification looks like. But if you read Mark Wolyn's book, It Didn't Start With You, there was a really good story in there about a young man who identified with an uncle who had a very untimely death. And it's interesting to watch how the way that the uncle died shows up in these really unexplained symptoms with the nephew, with the guy in the story, and how just a simple acknowledgement of the uncle who passed away really took care of all those really strange symptoms that the young man was experiencing out of the blue. Like it was just completely hit him off guard. So identifications show up like that. But if you read the book, you'll know exactly which story I'm talking about. So let me know what you think about that. If you've read it, or if you're going to read it, or once you do, come back and comment and let me know how interesting that story was for you. I found it fascinating. So those are the 4 themes, right? So as I guide you through my questions, I'm looking for words that jump out at me, that help me put the pieces together. And it can almost be like a dance as we ebb and flow between the words that you use and where you carry them in your body. So as gentle as the mapping process is, you may feel an influx of emotion. You may recall memories or have powerful and life-shifting aha moments where you finally put some pieces together and finally connect some dots. And so when you have those moments, I'm going to guide you gently back into your body so that whatever you are feeling can be acknowledged and felt and eventually metabolized. Because that reaction in your body tells me that we've hit the core, that we've hit the root. Because if you have watched my Becoming Body Aware video, you know that our wounds live in our body, our emotional wounds live in our body. And so when we have that emotional reaction, it's because we've hit a core. It's because we've hit the root. And it's just why having body awareness is so important to this process. So if you haven't watched my video, Becoming Body Aware, I really highly suggest it, because it's going to be the root of the work that you're going to need to get in and do this work with me. Because when the pieces of your map are staring up at you, begging to be seen and acknowledged, a powerful shift begins to happen as you start to connect those dots. Because you begin to see, and most importantly, you begin to feel your way out of those patterns that you have long needed to connect. So from the framework of the family map, we can then move to the next step in this healing process by bringing how you hold your core trauma internally into an outer representation. And that is called a family constellation. So my focus in particular is to guide emotionally conscious, and I define emotionally conscious as someone who has body awareness, so it's why I keep referring you back to Becoming Body Aware. So my focus in my work is to guide emotionally conscious women as they connect the dots from their mother wound, this breaking the bond work, this merge work, this rejection work, to the issues in their life, in their relationships, in their career, in their friendships, in their parenting, in their fertility, in their health. Because all of those things are affected by the way and the relationship that we have with our mother. So I would love to talk further with you about this, about the work that I do and how it might be one of the most liberating processes for you and one of the most healing processes that you could ever experience. So I have private sessions and I have group work, and they're both centered around this idea of ending the cycle of your mother wound. So we'll address your breaking the bond, where your merges are, how a rejection is affecting your life. And it can profoundly affect the framework from which you approach life. So there it is. That's family mapping. The 4 themes, how powerful they are in identifying and getting to the root of your core issue, your core trauma, and the core language approach, and the system that I use to get to understanding the system of your family. And honestly, it's my favorite part of the whole process. I find it fascinating connecting the dots. And for me, it's seeing those dots connected. And in my own life, seeing those dots connected from myself to my mom, to my grandma, and to her mom, and all the other women in my family, even on my dad's side, it provided a profound shift into who I believed I was. And it also let me know that what I thought I was carrying all by myself, I really wasn't. What was manifesting in my life had been in my family, in the women in my family for generations. And honestly, and it might just be because I have this awareness, because I'm doing this work, and not everybody can identify as this, and I'm not putting this on you, but for me, being able to do one of 2 things. One, realize that I wasn't holding it alone, and it allowed me to shift the holding of that back through the women that it had originated with was powerful, because it let me know that I'm not holding it alone. And oftentimes we can feel so alone in the way, in the issues that we're carrying in our life, right? But it also allowed me to have pride in knowing that I was the one who was going to end these cycles. How I was going to end the cycle of how the mother wound had shown up in my family for generations. And I was honored to be able to be that person for all of my ancestors and the ones that came before me. So that for me is how it affected me. Again, I can't recommend this book enough. I highly recommend that you get Mark Wohlen's book, It Didn't Start With You. I am a fan of audiobooks, so listening to the stories as he tells them was really shifting for me. But I also recommend you actually getting the book too, because there's some really great worksheets in there and some questionnaires and some other things that help you actually get to the root of what you may be working through in your life. It talks a little bit more, or a lot more, about the framework that I laid out today. I've also placed a link below to the video, Becoming Body Aware. It's a short 15-minute video, but it provides some powerful tools for you to be able to understand and learn what it means to get into your body. And once you watch that video, then I recommend that you follow the link to the article on my website, because there are 11 other exercises that you can do in the same way as you did with the video. And I'm just going to walk you through different questions and different scenarios that'll allow you to become aware of how you might be holding certain emotions in your body. So if this was helpful, I would love to hear about it. I would love for you to ask questions. Go and watch the video, Becoming Body Aware. Come back, let me know, or comment on that video. Let me know what you think. If this work is helping you, or these explanations are helping you at all. I'm going to be making more videos about this. The next video that I'm going to be making is really laying out what a family constellation is and what it might look like, both in private session and in group session. And so that'll be next week's video. And if you're interested in talking to me more about this work, I do offer no-cost consultations, and I can help you explore how and if a mother wound exists in your life. You can find all of my links below. I've also launched my public Facebook group tailored after the courses that I offer. It's called Ending the Cycle of Your Mother Wound, and that link will also be below. So come on in. We're going to have conversations every Monday morning. I'm going to do a Facebook Live, kind of expounding on the prior week's posts and talking about that a little bit more. But it's a great place for you to come in and just get targeted information about what a mother wound is and how healing can occur in your life. So come on, join that, and all the links will be down below. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I know that you have a lot of options when it comes to YouTube videos and everything that's out there. I'm just honored that you were able to spend this time with me. Thank you very much, and may you step into your healing with courage. Thank you.